Welcome everyone to the first Fortimize Focus series for real estate. My name is Dan Von Sover. I'll be the moderator for the next hour. For those that don't know me, I lead the real estate practice at Fortimize. We're a Salesforce consulting partner specializing in financial services. And then within that, we specialize in real estate. So owner operators, investors, brokers, and lenders. Before we introduce our four tremendous panelists today and dive into it, I wanted to touch on why it is we're hosting this event, why we're hosting this topic, and what we want to get out of it. In a normal world, I think this would be done in person with some socialization and maybe some Fortimize swag, but we're all living in these times. So I have in my whole career worked in real estate, and a big part of my job, even without me knowing it, was around technology. So I interacted with Salesforce every day when I was an asset manager at Stonehenge in New York City. I took a lot of that experience to Fortimize, and I'm fortunate enough today to speak to real estate companies all day, every day about their technology, some small initiatives, some big digital transformation initiatives. And throughout my coming up on 3 years now, time at Fortimize, one topic comes up consistently across the board. It's not leasing, it's not operations, it's not even the customer. It's about working with legacy ERP systems. So those systems are Yardi, MRI, RealPage, and JD Edwards. Those are usually the four. And almost all real estate companies have those systems, and those systems do some things great. Those systems do things that are not great, and innovation is usually not one of them. So, the real estate companies that I speak to are simply trying to navigate those two worlds. You have the large accounting-centric ERP systems on one hand, and you have the innovative forward-looking technology like Salesforce on the other. So whether it's technology staff or the business or executive leadership, everyone, it seems, is trying to navigate those two things and consider things like budget, change in the real estate business, change in customer behavior, technical governance, all that kind of stuff. So instead of, keeping these themes to ourselves, we wanted to share the experiences with the fellow real estate community. Despite some of us being competitors to some extent, we're all peers in a tremendously changing and challenging environment. It was changing before COVID, it's changing now after COVID almost daily. So for all the attendees out there, this is a time to hear other companies' stories, and hopefully you could leave here saying, similar companies to ours have figured this out, and technology could be super exciting and not a cost center. And our business would kill for something like this. We're hoping that you could learn from the panelists and their stories, hear their challenges, hear their solutions, and apply it to your job. So with that being said, we have four great panelists whom we're fortunate enough to speak to today. And I want them to introduce themselves. First up, Ken Fisher. You want to introduce yourself, Ken?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ken Fisher. I'm Vice President and CTO for Kimco Realty Corporation. I've been with Kimco a little over 16 years, so it's been quite a long road, and happy to join for all of you.
Amazing. John Dell'Omo, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm the Senior Vice President of Application Development at American Campus Communities. We're primarily a student housing focused REIT. I've been with ACC for the last 3 years, and it's been kind of fun because it's the first experience I've had in the REIT industry. I've been in a lot of other industries, so it's been fun to experience some of the challenges that the REIT industry has around technology. So excited to be part of the panel today.
Amazing. And thank you for being here. Super excited to hear about all the cool stuff that ACC is doing. Tom Parisi, my old colleague at Stonehenge.
Pleasure. Past 15 years, former CIO, CTO of Stonehenge Management Company located in New York City. And hopefully we get to enlighten you guys and help you out with your journey with Salesforce.
Amazing. Rukus, AvalonBay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Rukus, Chief Digital Officer at AvalonBay Communities. Similar to John, this is my first stint in the real estate industry. And it's been a journey understanding some of the challenges that exist from a technology perspective. I've been with AvalonBay about a year now, so happy to be on this panel with you guys.
Amazing. Well, thanks everybody. Let's hop to it. And for the attendees, please feel free to send questions through the Zoom. I'll see them and we could answer them at the end. We're going to carve out some time. So Ken, Kimco, large mall operator across the country. At a high level, how do you leverage Salesforce? How do you leverage MRI?
Sure. Well, to start, we kind of took the picture of these two big systems, Salesforce and MRI, and we said, all right, let's put a platform for our users that's specific to the functions that they perform for the organization. So we looked at MRI and we said, you know what? This is our platform for accounting. Salesforce, that's our platform for operations. And what we did is we built those two systems so that they would be tailored to the function and the role that those users were performing. The systems obviously talk to each other, which is I think part of the purpose of why we're here today. But at the end of the day, MRI is an accounting system and Salesforce is an operational view of our business. And as long as we get those two systems to talk together, then all of our users should be satisfied and have the ability to do their jobs.
Amazing. And I actually want to touch on you actually went through an ERP evaluation. Now I imagine a lot of the attendees, their ERP is their ERP, and no one really tries to change that, their GL, their accounting system, other than Tom Parisi, who tried to move it from Yardi to Salesforce. But what, just from an integration perspective, what went into your evaluation when you were looking at ERPs?
Sure. Yeah, and to your point, we actually chose Salesforce while we were on a previous ERP, CTI. And at the time, we owned CTI, we had access to the code. I had two RPG developers on staff, so integrating wasn't a problem. So we went forward with Salesforce. When CTI was sunsetted and the decision had to be made about moving to a new ERP, obviously we were involved in that selection process. I think at the end of the day, it's important to note that, we let the users drive the decision. I mean, I could build the best technically capable and integrated system. And if it's terrible for our end users, then I failed and it will not be well received. So, we were part of the selection process. IT was part of the scoring tool. Integration was certainly an area that we looked at. But I will say, coming out of those demos, we felt comfortable being able to integrate with any system that our users chose. Some might have been easier than others. And that, you discover as you go through the process. But at the end of the day, we felt comfortable that we could have integrated with whatever anybody chose.
Gotcha. So you basically said, we got the demos for these ERPs. We're comfortable integrating with any of them. We're, Salesforce and open platform integrate with all of them. Now let's look at the business pieces of it. And ultimately you went with MRI. Great.
Yeah, and we spent, during those demos, we spent a bit of time with the technical resources that came in for the various software vendors. And, we asked the basic questions. Is your data model accessible? Do you provide an ERD? Do you provide documentation about how the system works? What are the available methods to extract data out of the system? And how easy are those tools to use? Likewise, how well are you as a partner with us, the ERP vendor, going to work with us to help us develop these integrations? Because to your point, then getting information in and out of Salesforce, it's not the hard part. And honestly, getting into ERP and out is not that hard either. It's just you've got to go in with the right tools and the right information.
Amazing. John, what about you, ACC? How do you use Salesforce? How do you use MRI right now?
I think our story is probably a little similar to what I heard from Ken. I mean, we use Salesforce to support all of our operational systems around the leasing process, right? So we do the guest card creation. So we get our leads through Salesforce. We're doing our online application process into Salesforce, our leasing process, our resident management process, all those things that are, operational or customer facing, we're doing, leveraging the Salesforce platform. We pretty much use MRI, probably very similar to Ken, as our accounting system, right? We do our ledger for the resident, and then we just do our AP and GL. We have various leasing processes, and one of the reasons why we like Salesforce, and as we went through this process, we chose Salesforce was, we do by the bed, we do by the bedroom, we do by the unit, we even lease blocks of beds. So we needed a lot more flexibility around our operational processes, and Salesforce gave us that flexibility and was the right fit for us for doing that. For us, even, Disney is a new thing for us. It was a different process and outside of our student housing vertical. So it presented some challenges for us around the way we integrate with Disney systems. So having Salesforce as our operational platform really gave us the flexibility we needed to support that. So yeah, so we use Salesforce like they do, like Ken talked about, and we use MRI just as our accounting system for the lack of to kind of keep it simple.
Yeah, so it sounds like the accounting system is used for the accounting stuff that gets audited, sent to investors, and Salesforce for the operational stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely am going to come back to hear about the actual integration method there. But Tom, sole Yardi user on the panel. So Stonehenge is a big Salesforce user. Could you talk about the decision to build a platform on Salesforce, and not to make this a Salesforce commercial, but from the context of your accounting system falling short? You know, what was your experience with Yardi, and what were the challenges there that made you look to a tool like Salesforce or others to begin with?
Yeah, so I don't want to copy and repeat what John and Ken said, but we went along the same route after it was determined that Yardi had to be the financial reporting system. We just decided to put every other component on Salesforce, and customer facing was huge for us because we were figuring that would be our big differentiator. Yardi at the time just did not play well, and there was only really two ways to get any information out of Yardi. One was a full SQL database backup of the entire database every night, or we could pick and choose and get an FTP upload of individual fields. Now, that in itself presented a challenge because their data dictionary was well over 400 pages, and they had similar names for fields such as something as simple as rent. There was literally 34 or 36 fields with rent something, so it became a challenge to do the proper mapping. So the data integration in the beginning of the project was, a huge challenge. And what we did was we found a partner very helpful. We had great executive sponsorship with Ofer Yardeni, and we had a champion of the project who's actually on this call, Mr. John Fishman. I have to give a call out to him. John had the energy and the ambition to go forth and just be relentless with this whole thing. And we got a partner with Informatica, which is, again, I don't want to be a commercial. It is a great tool for doing any sort of data mapping and integration. And that's the route we had to take, was getting a full SQL database. We went along the FTP route for a while, and it just wasn't working out as we needed more and more data out of Yardi as we grew with the Salesforce initiative. It was just becoming way too clumsy and clunky and not too dependable. So then we went to the full SQL database and got an Amazon, an AWS instance, and that was key. But that wasn't a 2 or 3 month thing. That was over the course of, probably 2.5 to 3.5 years that all transformed itself.
Tom, was Yardi involved at all? I mean, did they have support staff to kind of help you along the way, or were you out on your own? How did that work?
So Yardi does have support for Yardi. Any software issues that you have, their team is, they're crackerjack at their product. But when it came to any sort of integrations, they really didn't have much going on unless you wanted to join their partner program. And at the time, it was just cost prohibitive for us to do that. And we did not want to become a Yardi partner. That in itself presented a whole lot of difficulties and intricacies. So getting the data out, that was the only way. Getting data in at that point was just a big no. I know over the last 3 or 4 years, they've transformed. Now there are certain fields that they will let you update in the database, and there are certain ones that are still locked down. But that doesn't mean there's no hope. I can tell you that there are partners that you can work with that can get that data in there and upload it, and it works.
Yeah, I definitely want to come back to that. Rukus, in evaluating your technology, what works, what doesn't, and with MRI, what are your current business and technical roadblocks? So what feedback have you gotten from the business, or what you've seen yourself, that made you want to explore other systems to operate your business?
Yeah, it's so given some of the comments from John and Ken, they're a little bit ahead of where where we are in terms of clean separation between operations and accounting. Our operations, teams utilize, multiple systems. So we've got a little bit of Salesforce and a little bit of MRI. So I think it further complicates sort of the overall ecosystem. From a business perspective, it's really about speed. I think, the name of the game for us is speed to innovate, speed to market, speed to scale, speed to evolve. And as a business, we are constantly exploring different ways and different ideas outside of, sort of the core of the business, which is, apartment rentals. And it's incredibly challenging to implement those solutions in MRI. So over the period of time that we've utilized it, we've built a ton of customizations, which are incredibly difficult to maintain and support over time. And then the second thing is, we've emphasized our focus on the customer. As the industry is typically not really focused on the customer. It's really about the unit and optimizing for the unit, revenue for the unit, and floor plans and things of that nature. But with MRI and some of the ancillary solutions that we have, it's almost impossible to have that view, complete holistic view, to really solve for our customers' needs. And then from a technical perspective, it's just the access to talent and the amount of time it takes to actually upgrade systems because of the significant number of customizations that we've built over time.
Amazing. Yeah, Rukus, you said something interesting about being focused on the customer, and that's just not something that's typical in the real estate industry. I always say, look at like a multifamily owner operator's website, and what do you see? You see pictures of clubhouses, you see pictures of apartments and buildings, nothing around the customer community, nothing around, them saying, I want to live somewhere here. It's just really a piece of property.
Right.
So I'm with you that there seems to be slowly being a shift in now let's actually focus on the customer. And that's something that maybe the big ERP don't really do very well. Right. John, could you talk at a high level, how do you integrate MRI and Salesforce, both the method in which you do it and maybe sort of the reasoning behind those particular data points for the business?
Yeah, sure. So when we started down this vision a couple years ago, so when I came on, this was really the beginning of this process of us transforming and going to Salesforce. We knew integration was going to be critical to our success, right? If we wanted to leverage each part of the system and our ecosystem to its maximum capability, we were going to have to be able to integrate those applications. So we started down this path, and we had a lot of batch processing that was moving data using API endpoints back and forth to Salesforce and moving data fine. There were some limits we were pushing up against. So we've actually evolved as we've gone through this process. We use Azure messaging queue, right? So now it's much more real time. We put things on the queue. If something, so example, we have a process where if a promotion ends, we have a cap, say there's a cap of 50 for free parking. We want that promotion to end. Well, we want that immediately to be seen on our website. We want agreements that are outside for signing that haven't been signed to be expired and a new agreement to go out without the free parking. So we want all those things to occur as near real time as we can. So we have leveraged API endpoints, we have leveraged messaging queue to move that data around our system as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So we recognized when we started that this was going to be critical to our success. We have improved over the last 2 years when we started our implementation and the vision we had. We've learned more, we've done more, we've been asked to do more. So I think like everybody on this panel, integration is critical to our ability to leverage those systems, being able to move things from Salesforce into MRI, monthly rent charges at the first of the month, any miscellaneous charges. Our source system for those things comes out of Salesforce because that has all of our resident occupancy information. So we're pushing those charges into MRI, pushing them into the ledger so we can collect payment against it. So we do a lot around that. We try to limit what we do in MRI because it has some limitations for our business. So I think that for the most part, I think that covers kind of how we handle the integration side.
So John, I have to ask, because I'm sure attendees are hearing that, and particular ones that are in the technology, the IT arms, and saying, how do you go about making sure the data is clean and the technical governance? How do you make sure data flows properly from one to another, that the connection is smooth? And how do you go about ensuring that all that's being done?
Yeah, so obviously, when you talk about financial data, that's the most critical audit thing that we dealt with. So our auditor, EY, we got with them early in the process. We talked about what we wanted to do. We talked about our vision. We actually have an integration object in Salesforce. So anything we push over to MRI goes to this integration object, and that's the source for pushing over to MRI. It's monitored, it's flagged. If there's any failures, it's captured there. Our process will retry those failures. So we have an auditable process. We can give that information to our auditors. They can see everything that goes back and forth to MRI, which is critical for us. So we really took painstaking measures to make sure that we were checking the boxes that were needed for audit. We're a publicly traded company, so audit is very critical for us. We do want to be transparent on the way we do things. So it was a lot of conversation. We engaged with our auditors early on to make sure that we were doing the things that were necessary so we could prove out our processes, the data, those types of things. So we do monitor that integration table. Obviously, fortunately, we don't have a lot of failures, but when they're there, they're easily captured, and we can troubleshoot and resolve pretty quickly.
So John, you're saying that if there is a failure, you sort of get ahead of it versus someone in the field, in the business, raising their hand and saying something's broken. It's probably the worst thing for someone in IT to hear is this is broken. But you kind of get ahead of that?
Yeah, and then obviously, like I'm sure everybody else here, we have a life cycle process. UAT is a heavily focused on as far as whenever we're doing anything rather than integration, we got the business involved in the UAT. We just did an MRI upgrade. So we had to regression test all of our integrations, make sure they were all working correctly. So we get those sign-offs. But yeah, we're in front of that. We monitor it. We know if there's an issue, we have monitoring for that. We tend to notify the business if we see something. But fortunately, we've built enough redundancy that it cleans itself up pretty quickly, because a lot of the things are around timing. Do we have the person in MRI that we're trying to integrate with? Because everything's so quick. Yep.
Amazing. Ken, what about you? How does Kimco go about integrating MRI and Salesforce?
It's kind of my turn to repeat, John, but probably from a different perspective. So back in the day when we actually purchased Salesforce, I mentioned we were on CTI. We went with Dell'Omo. We just we weren't really in the business of developing APIs, so we kind of went and found a partner. We looked at Informatica, looked at Boomi, looked at MuleSoft, chose Boomi, and we built that integration. When we moved over to MRI, there was an opportunity to evaluate whether or not we wanted to stay with that product or do something ourselves. And we made the decision to go with Azure, just like John. The reasons behind there were a couple. There were limitations on Dell'Omo. It was getting pricey with the number of integrations that we were starting to build, and it's a per connector kind of pricing model. So as we were looking at what we wanted to do in the future, the volume of integrations that we thought we might be executing both with MRI as well as to our other systems became such that we decided it was better to go on our own. We do use Azure as well, consumption plan. It's at the end of the day, the data's got to reside where it belongs. There's got to be one owner of the data, right? So, the financial information sits in MRI, the operational information sits over on Salesforce, and we push back what is needed going in either direction. What we didn't want was a bloated MRI system that had, purely tenant-based attributes that were only used for operational reporting. Users going to screens that had 26 user-defined fields that were tracking all this information, and frankly that it wasn't getting updated because users have if you're not an active user of a system like MRI, right, you're a lease admin and you're now responsible for maintaining a single field on a single page inside of the financial system. Your motivation to go in there and actively manage that data becomes less and less, and the data quality becomes that much more impacted. So, again, we keep the resident information where it belongs. We push it back and forth, via Azure, and it's working pretty well.
Now, Ken, did you look at MuleSoft or other methods that you and your team made the decision that's not the best route? We're going to go this way, and why didn't you go like a MuleSoft route or another method?
When we were getting away from Boomi, honestly, we briefly looked at them again, but not much had changed from the previous, evaluation that we had done. I think it was like 3 or 4 years earlier. Over those 3 or 4 years, we became more confident in our ability to develop the APIs on our own. At the start seemed like, if you're not a development house, and we didn't really have a development team when we went with Boomi, looking at developing all these APIs on your own can seem daunting. But we hired somebody who had some experience with developing APIs in Azure. We sat with him and went through the integrations that we had, as well as the ones that we wanted to build. Looked at MuleSoft, talked to Salesforce about MuleSoft, looked at Boomi and Informatica, and just felt confident that we could do it on our own. And that's the way we went, and it all worked out.
And Ken, how much of this design for the integration was done up front? I assume there's a fair amount, but did you go into this project saying this is exactly how we're doing it, this is the architecture, and then you implement it? Did you do pivoting during it, because you don't know what you don't know? Or just in general, any gotchas around the integration, and can you speak a little bit on that?
Make sure you test the integrations in your test environment first. But no, that didn't happen to us, but I mean, that goes without saying. It's an iterative process for us. Like we didn't big bang this thing and say we're going to develop 125 APIs or whatever the number's going to be, and let's all get them done and then we go live. It starts with the simple stuff. We have now contacts that contacts are being maintained in Salesforce because that's where they belong. This is a CRM after all. It's contact management. So as contacts are updated, we need certain contacts inside the financial system, billing address, legal contact address. So, you start with that simple integration, say, okay, let's put this over. Okay, now we've got the integration in both places. Some of it was forced on us. I mean, honestly, because with going live on MRI and converting to a brand new financial system, we did take a hard look at what the custom fields were. So like as we were implementing, we had a list of custom fields that were coming out of CTI. We took out the ones that weren't being used, the ones that somebody said these need to remain. We sat with the user and said, what is it for? Who's updating it? How often is it updated? Why is it being used? Where is it being used? And if it wasn't being used for something inside of MRI, it went off the list and it went to Salesforce. So it was kind of like a piece by piece. And then you figure out the ones that do need to talk to each other, the information that needs to go back and forth. And we started with those. But as we continued to develop more tools on the Salesforce platform, there's information that belongs, in the ERP system. We just developed a rent commencement date tracker, right? So that's a field that obviously is MRI because that kicks off the rent billing. But the activity of actually managing the build out and the expansion of the space or whatever you're doing, there's a date that's moving, getting the permits. So we're matching that date and we're tracking it inside of Salesforce. And when we tender the building, we send the date over and then it's updated MRI. So you've removed, 2 people having to perform the same function with an email going back and forth about, hey, by the way, this is the new RCD, make sure you enter an MRI. They forget. We're not billing them when we should start billing them. Like, that's the whole point of doing this, is to eliminate those redundancies and ensure that the data is accurate.
Yeah, it's funny, when I talk to companies and they talk about integrations or they ask about integrations, a lot of times people think this is like a light switch where it's on or off and all the data flows from one to another. But in reality, even just real estate operations, you only need a very, very specific amount of data. I mean, if you're in Salesforce as a leasing agent, either for retail, commercial, family, what do you actually need from an MRI or a Yardi? You need a lease expiration date, you need the tenant name and a rent charge. And maybe and stuff around the inventory, like your actual units and what's vacant and the statuses. But outside of that, all that other data doesn't need to move. So I'm always saying that to our customers of it's very, very specific data that needs to flow. So this isn't like, boiling the ocean with every data that's in every one of your systems. Tom, it's easy to say, Tom, you don't hold Yardi near and dear to your heart, but, and you went in a little bit into sort of how you did the integration, but similar to my question, any gotchas when it comes to integrating Salesforce with Yardi? First question. And the second question is there anything you would do differently, looking back, or how you do something today, given things sort of change over time? Anything you would do differently now? So two-part question. Any gotchas and anything you would do differently?
Yeah, so let me start. I mean, Yardi is a great system. It does what it does, and it does it extremely well. Tracking all the different rent regulation laws in New York City and New York State, it is superb for that. Outside of being in that rental arena for that specific item and then doing the financial reporting, we made the decision to do everything else on Salesforce. So we became, as Dan, as you well know, Ofer Yardeni, the founder, was very big on, he wanted it to be customer friendly. It wasn't about technology's sake. It was about, I don't know if it was John or Ken who said it, but we didn't want to duplicate anything, but we definitely wanted to make everything friendly. So that caused us to do a ton of integration work. So roll back the tape. What was the pain point? The pain point was just making that decision and getting buy-in from the people to say, okay, Yardi's only going to be used for the accounting department. Everything else is you're going to log into a Salesforce screen. And that was a big cultural shift. And for those of you who have been in real estate for a while, this was back in 2008. So it was going basically from the 1960s to, the new century, the new millennium, even in a matter of, a couple of months. So it was managing the change management was probably more difficult than even just getting the right data out of Yardi and getting that all set up. But the change management was something to be very, very aware of. And I think it was Ken who brought up the point that, listen, we can build just about anything. We're technologists, we are innovation people, we can do that. However, the end users are the ones who really need to be involved with designing the system. And I think if we were to do anything different in the phase one rollout, it would have been to get the people who are doing the daily operation business involved in that build out process sooner rather than later. Once you introduce it, it was a rollout, the questions and objections came fast and furious within hours of people logging in. It was like, why the hell did you do that? We don't do it this way. We do it this way. And, we're all like, oh, okay. So yeah, there was a lot of redo, so the initial lead screen that had probably 84 fields for the leasing agents to fill out went quickly from 84 to 20, because again, we only needed some pertinent data before it became an opportunity. So that was one of the things I would definitely have done differently. And then from there, once people got involved and they became a champion of the project and they can see that their suggestions were actually live on screen now, we had buy-in. And within, I'm going to say, a year of the initial rollout, and we corrected those issues, we went from just doing a fully automated leasing rollout to we were now doing purchase orders. We were now doing tenant cases online. We were now doing the calendaring for freight elevators, all in Salesforce, and being able to do email notifications, and it just grew. So getting the people involved again early was key, and there's nothing you can't do. The platform is that extensible, and again, not to be a Salesforce commercial, but I'm going to assume I'm the oldest technology guy in our panel here, just from the amount of, or lack thereof, white hair now. It is really an open, wide open platform, which is secure. I don't want anybody to get nervous about that, but if you can really think it and build it out, to Ken's point, and have that time in the team to do it, and I think Rukus mentioned it as well, you had a lot of customization work. But there are ways to do that, especially now with the declarative tools that we have with Flows and Process Builder. There are a lot of ways to build out a whole lot of automation with just minimum Salesforce experience and usage. I mean, being a Salesforce admin is a tough title to have, but it's not like you need a developer. For that, we would go to a Fortimize, right? So now roll tape forward, the things that we were looking out for as we were doing our integration work was using less and less Apex and using more and more declarative, only because, to Lucas's point, it became easier for us to manage, right? We had a very small IT shop. It was 3 of us supporting, you know, all of the IT initiatives. And the only way it was going to work is if we knew and we can control, as opposed to John's point, he was one step ahead of the curve at all times. Well, when something broke in Salesforce, if my team did not do it, we were a phone call away and opening up a ticket in a queue. And if salespeople in the leasing department can't have a current inventory, you know what that's chaotic, and that's not good for business.
So
sorry, so long-winded.
That was great. So just to say it back, so it's sort of what you would do differently is not necessarily changing do a big pivot for the method of how you integrate, but it's more of involve the business. The end users could tell you, here's what I need to see in my day-to-day. People who are on the Yardi side could say, here's what I don't want to keep re-entering again, because there could be issues with you know, duplication or human error and that kind of stuff. But it's involving the people, the business users, in those decisions on the integration from a business perspective.
Yeah, so not to dampen this, but I need to put a spin on this. You know, everybody's got a core system, right? And you really have to know what the core system is going to do and what it's not going to do. And what it's not going to do, if your choice is to build on the Salesforce platform, build it, but build it right. You know, build it right the first time, and getting those proper people involved. And John said it. If you don't use your sandboxes and UAT to do your smoke testing and everything else, you're going to end up regretting that big time. So, you know, don't let the core systems, the MRIs and the Yardis scare you. It's more or less that they do what they do and they do it well. It's what they don't do well and what you can do and manage easier and give your users, whether it be your customers or your end users, a much better experience and easier, less clicks, less screens. Everybody loves that. That's really the decisions that need to be made. And when you do make those decisions, get those people involved. And because on Salesforce, it's a whole lot easier to manage what you've built than have a customization done on one of Lucas's many systems that his ops team uses.
Amazing. So Rukus, what do you look for when doing an evaluation as it relates to connecting systems? You know, because the reason I ask that is siloed systems, the evaluation is kind of easy. Sort of what's the shiny product, what works well, what's cool, but there's this whole other level of how does it all work together in the context of the technology stack. So what are the major areas that factors into your decisions now that you're kind of looking at different options?
Yeah, and a lot of the things that we care about and focus on, Ken, John, and Tom have kind of mentioned. For me and our organization, the vision that we have is we want our ecosystem to be real-time, relevant, and reliable. So that's our internal, sort of mantra, R cubed. And what's required to actually achieve that? It's ease of integration and access to data, right? To perform analytics and modeling that we need. So fundamentally, we're looking for systems and solutions that are API-based, API-driven, that support real-time streaming and eventing, that enable access to data to facilitate analytics and modeling, to drive the business forward. And if, even third-party solutions or that we're looking to leverage for our long-term vision, those two things are critical. The data that's captured, do we have access to it? Can we get access to it? and how easy is it to, to build integrations with from an API perspective.
And what Tom was saying, Rukus, are you leveraging people from the business? Are they sort of kind of guiding you in terms of, from a business perspective, what it is they need to see and all that?
Absolutely. So we're in the early phases of our plan. So we spent a ton of this year sort of mapping out, doing assessments on sort of tools and platforms and providers we're going to use to actually accelerate our transformation. But the business is a critical component of those discussions, understanding what the challenges are that they have, what the needs are that we're not able to meet right now. We have several initiatives sort of slated for 2021 that we understand, it's going to be significantly challenging for us to actually deliver on them with the current solutions that we have. So we have to factor all that into the roadmap for 2021. But Tom's point is spot on. Change management is a huge piece. One of the things that how we've been thinking about sort of the transformation is really, given my background in the organizations I've led and transformations I've led in the past. Very microservices driven, very fit for purpose, solutions, real time driven, and the area that we kind of got stuck on was yes, we're going to solve for our customers, our external customers, but how do we also make things simpler for our internal ops folks? We don't want them dealing with 17 systems to get work done. Yes, we're trying to automate as much as we can and streamline processes. So it's solving for both customers, our external prospects and residents, and internal folks, and trying to simplify the number of systems that they have to interface with to get work done.
Amazing. And they relate to each other, because if you have a leasing agent internally that's jumping around systems and working inefficiently, it has a trickle-down effect to the customer.
Absolutely.
You definitely relate to each other. But to play it back, you solve for both. You solve for internal, so the internal efficiencies and processes and workflows and automations that generally up employee satisfaction. People want to come to work. They're excited about leveraging that technology because they know it integrates with their systems well and there's not data problems. But then also the customer experience and the customer facing stuff, which are ultimately the people that rent your apartments.
Absolutely.
Amazing. John, I wanted to ask you, we were talking about the data governance and getting ahead of any potential errors and all that stuff. It sounds like you have a staff of team that really is on top of this and a really well thought out plan of who does what within the organization. Could you just talk about the executive support that you guys have had? Because it seems like the executives at ACC said, over the next couple of years, we want to do something major here. We want to separate ourselves. So you just talk about that support and how important that was to what you're doing now?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll probably preach it to the choir in this panel is when you have an executive team that is focused on technology and understands the value of technology, it makes your job much easier. So I'm very fortunate. Our CEO is a huge fan of technology and the innovation it can do to help us be more efficient, create a better customer experience. My boss, the CTO, obviously the same mindset. So I'm fortunate that, we have a situation where we get the support to do the things we want to do. Now, it comes with a price, right? There's money that's being spent and there's an expectation of value that is to be delivered. And I think, Tom really nailed it. The thing about Salesforce that's been beneficial for us is that as we have delivered things to the business, they've seen the value of the platform and they've wanted to reinvest more money to do more things, right? Like they see how quickly we can do things, how efficiently we can do things, the benefit to the customers, so it's, you get a little bit at the beginning, you prove the value of it. And now every time they need something, the question is, how can we do this how can we do this on our core platforms? Obviously, Salesforce and MRI. How, what's the way that we do this? So yeah, and it's funny because I know Ken talked about doing APIs internally. Yes, we have a development team. I have a relatively small team. I mean, it's not huge. We don't have 50 developers, but we do a lot. We have a handful of .NET developers that can handle a lot of the integration of some of our custom apps that we build. We have a great relationship with our implementation partner, Fortimize, that helps us with some of the custom Salesforce stuff we do. But we're not a huge team, but we're very efficient at what we do, and we've provided value to the business. So, and the other thing Tom talked about, having those partners, we have great relationships with the business, right? They've learned more about what we can do from a technology perspective, so they're right there with us. We're making the business case to spend money. We just bought recently Field Service Lightning. We want to check it out and see if we could use it, but we're not going to be able to buy those things if we can't prove the value of the things that we've already purchased. So yeah, for me, it's been great. I'm fortunate that I took this opportunity to build something that had the executive leadership that we needed.
Can I just jump on and make one point to what John said? The executive leadership and sponsorship is critical. That's it. Enough said. However, partners in the technology arena are crucial to pick the right ones and get the right relationship. My team, listen, I'm not going to preach. My team we were not crackerjacks at all. We were good at what we did, and we were diligent. And we were turning around API integrations in 2 weeks. I mean, from start to live. And that's not because we were so smart. That's because the system and the platform was that easy to integrate. And we had partners who were absolutely terrific. And not necessarily the most expensive, but they knew what they were doing. And when they're intelligent and they know their product and we know what we want and we need, it makes it that much easier to get stuff rolled out. And yet 2 weeks to integrate is not happening for any component or module on an MRI or a Yardi ever. And I'm sure Ken and John will attest to that.
Yeah, we do deployments almost every 2 weeks of new features out to our customers. It is that, I mean, Tom is not exaggerating, it is that quick to get stuff out.
Amazing. We have 11 minutes, and maybe we could end a bit early. Everyone loves meetings that end early. But we do have 2 questions from the crowd that I want to get to. The first question, and we touched on this a little bit, but how involved are the people from MRI, Yardi, and RealPage in your integration efforts? So maybe that could be a question for you, John. When building this design and this robust integration platform, was MRI involved? Did you need to leverage them for certain things? Where do you tell the attendees, you should leverage your ERP staff to kind of help you along the way, if that's what you did?
Yeah, we actually have, we reached out to MRI. We were pretty transparent about what we wanted to do. We had one of their consultants that was kind of a partner with us as we talked about, we built our own custom integrations into MRI. I know MRI has MRI mix, but we actually built our own custom integrations because we want to be able to do very specific things. We worked with them. We told them what we wanted to do. They helped us make sure that we understood some of the potential pitfalls around their data model and things we needed to populate. So we had a very productive, transparent. We still work with them regularly. I think for us, just being upfront about what we're trying to accomplish, understanding it's a partnership, treating them as a partner, I think was productive for us. And yeah, we didn't have any problems working with MRI. I think it's probably the same experience Tom had with Yardi. I mean, MRI is a good product. It does what it does well. And we leveraged their expertise to make sure that we could do what we wanted to do efficiently.
And they had staff, MRI and Tom with Yardi, they had staff that was dedicated to helping customers with integrations?
Was that for me or for Tom? For me, yes, we had a person that we worked with directly. Yeah, we have a person that's helped us along the way.
That person's sole job was helping the customers with integrations to other systems?
That's how he helped us. Yeah, I don't know what his whole job is outside of our interaction with him, but for us, he was completely focused on helping us integrate into MRI.
John.
Tom, and what about? Go ahead, Rukus.
No, just a question for John. Was that person a hands-on person, actually actively building the integration?
No, we did all the work. Yeah. No.
Consulting services.
Yeah, he basically let us know if we were going to go outside go off the rails at times. You know, we would tell him kind of what we wanted to do, our thoughts around how we were going to do it. We would work. He certainly had a very detailed technical understanding of how things would work in MRI and making sure we did things correctly. But yeah, no, he didn't write any code for us, if that's the question you're asking.
That's your voice. Cool. Tom, the last question here. I have a question from the crowd. Curious to know, since you took everything off of Yardi minus the accounting, what are you pushing back into Yardi, if anything at all? They currently use, this is the person speaking, they currently use Yardi to process applications after pushing guest card information over. Are you processing applications within Salesforce?
Yes.
A lot of there, and so
we are doing everything outside of Yardi. And the leasing process 100% is done on the Salesforce platform. What we push into Yardi is, again, for tenant card. That's really where that ends. To go back to the initial question too, Dan, Yardi integration wasn't existing when we did this in 2008, and about 3.5 years ago, we had Yardi who said they're ready, they want to get us off of Salesforce and bring us back in. And in the initial conversation, the gentleman who was representing a Yardi partner said to us, "Why did you guys make the decision to use a leads to opportunities program to go down and take all your tenant facing stuff that way?" So once they still weren't aware that Salesforce is a platform. They referred to it several times as simply a CRM to do leads to opportunities and lead tracking. Yeah, that was unfortunate, but we knew we did the right thing, and no, they didn't have an integration person at that point that we could rely on. I hope that answers both questions.
Yeah, I hope that answered the question. I don't know who sent that, but I'm more than happy to volunteer Tom to speak to you offline about those details.
Absolutely.
So we're at time. We have about 5 minutes left. If there aren't any other questions from the group, as much as we could talk about this stuff all day, I think we all have day jobs, especially towards the end of the year. So guys, the 4 panelists, thank you from the bottom of my heart for speaking today. All the attendees out there, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be sending out a recording of the video with some other collateral about the event, and also an invite to the next one. So if there's nothing else, thanks, and have a wonderful day. Everybody.
Pleasure meeting John, Ken, Lucas. Thank you so much, guys. Awesome.
And John, Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.